as leaders, there's this mentality sometimes that we have to be the problem solvers.
Yes.
We have to be great at everything. And no, your job as a leader is to create the environment for people to thrive and grow.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you're not the person doing the work, actually probably most of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you have to let people fail a little bit too.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Launchpad, where we help technical managers improve themselves, their teams, and their organizations. On this show, I talk with industry leaders, coaches, authors, and experts to give you actionable insights to help improve your own performance and the performance of those around you. Today's show is one of a series that I recorded at the recent Association for Talent Development Conference. If the video looks a little weird or the audio isn't as clean as normal, I do apologize. This was my first time recording out in the wild. I learned a lot, and I promise next time it'll be a little bit smoother. Our guest today is Jennifer Recla. Jennifer is a leadership coach and trainer with a special focus on strengths-based leadership. She is the former director of organizational learning and development at Colorado Access and recently went out on her own to help more organizations improve their leadership and culture. During this conversation, you can expect to learn what strengths-based leadership is, why it is so effective, and how you can get started today using strengths with your team or organization. Before we get into the discussion, I do want to remind you to make sure to subscribe if this is your first time listening so you never miss a future episode. And if you are already subscribed, then I humbly ask that you share this show with at least one other person. That, after all, is how we grow, and I can't tell you how much it means to me. With that, let's get started with Jennifer Recla. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah.
You recently went out on your own, right?
Yeah, back April 1. So
Brand new.
I'm in, week 6 or 7. I feel like such a newbie. I feel really green, but it's also the honeymoon stage.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot, and also just trying to slow down and take a breath.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can slow down and take a little bit of a breath in this conversation then, because I'm excited because we chatted earlier and we're talking basically just about how a lot of your career has been in leadership development, and it's about developing leaders with a strengths-based approach.
Yes.
So I'd love to start with, for anybody that hasn't, maybe they've heard those terms, like what does that mean?
Yes. So I love the way that Marcus Buckingham defines strengths.
Yep.
Strengths strengthen you.
Okay.
And weaknesses weaken you.
Okay.
So that has really driven the way that I have focused on strengths-based leadership, which is let's spend more time, most of our time, on the things that we're really good at, that energize us, that bring us joy, and the things that we're not as great at, the things that weaken us, or they're more diminishing for us, or maybe they're even areas of opportunity. Recognize that we have those, and then partner up with people that have strengths in those spaces.
Got it.
So it's much more of a team focus as well, and I don't have to be good at everything.
Yeah.
And you can't be. So I'd rather be really great at 5 things than try to be okay or good at this many things.
Yeah.
And the research shows that with a strengths-based approach, your teams are more engaged and your growth trajectory is much higher than if you try to work on your areas of opportunity or your gaps where, yes, I can get a little bit better, but maybe it's 0.2% every day versus 1% every day that really grows over time. And it's just in general so motivating.
Yes.
And then the collaboration piece, we have to, I think, approach our work as a team, and it really goes nicely with that team-based approach too.
And it makes sense. I remember I used to talk to people about this when I was at SpaceX, and always think about, we'd give the examples of the people at the top of the organization and how there's just, for a technically minded person, they're used to getting in the specifics and they want to have more and more detail and more and more detail. But if you're the head of a company like SpaceX, you can't be the expert in the engines, the avionics, the structures. You just can't. But I think especially for new leaders, that's a difficult transition to make. Do you ever run into that where, you usually get promoted to leader because you're the one that's good at the most things, and you just so how do you help people kind of make that switch of it? It's not about just you anymore. You need to leverage this team. Yeah.
So part of that, because I hear that, the way that I grew in organizations was fixing those gaps
Yeah.
and
Yes.
making sure that I was great at all of these things. And that's what got me to the point of this. It's hard for me to change that mentality. And so then I try to put it back on the employee, or even put themselves in the employee's shoes. When your leader comes to you to say, you have so much value and strength that you can provide in this space, I've seen it, I'm not that great at it. This is where I need help. This is where I need you to partner. Oh, if you're on the receiving end of that, it feels so good.
Yeah.
You just filled my bucket because you were looking at me as the expertise, and it showed me a little bit of vulnerability as you as my leader, that you don't have to be great at everything. And I think as leaders, there's this mentality sometimes that we have to be the problem solvers.
Yes.
We have to be great at everything. And no, your job as a leader is to create the environment for people to thrive and grow.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you're not the person doing the work, actually probably most of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you have to let people fail a little bit too.
It's so funny that you just said that, because so we're in, so we're at ATD right now. We just listened to Matthew McConaughey speak, and there's, for some reason, this clear memory that I have in my mind of one of his movies, U-571.
Yes.
Not one of his more popular movies. I wouldn't say, but for whatever reason, there's a scene. So he's a submarine captain that gets thrust into this position. There's a moment where he says, "I don't know." And his senior enlisted person comes over and says, "How dare you say that? The captain always knows." And I think, being formerly in the military, I was raised kind of with this sense, and at least movies portray this idea of the leader is the one that has all the answers.
Yeah.
And it's just so not true.
Yes.
And it really is, but it is a kind of a re-education. And I loved the tip you gave, because many people become leaders without maybe ever having an example of a good leader in their career.
100%. Yeah.
And so taking the time, rather than just thinking, oh, what have I seen? Put yourself in the shoes of the people that you now lead, and imagine, what if a leader had said this to me? How would I have felt? I think that it's a really great way to experience, oh, okay, this is what it would be like.
Well, and when you're an individual contributor, you're the one on stage.
Yeah.
When you're a leader, you're no longer on the stage, and you shouldn't be. It's all about multiplying, lifting everyone else, and not taking the credit.
Yes.
It's, you're celebrating, you're the cheerleader, you're the advocate, and I think we lose that.
Yeah.
Maybe because we didn't have the right example, or maybe because, well, the reason I got this position is because I did all this stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're asking me to do something different.
Yes.
Right? Because you're shifting.
100%.
You're no longer that technician. A leader's mindset is it's very, very different.
Yeah, it is. So when people make that mindset, okay, we gotta we want to build out a team, we want to focus on strengths. How do you help leaders, teams kind of identify where are the strengths gaps?
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so if it's a new leader, new team trying to build culture, there's a couple of go-to tools that I like to use. I love Clifton Strengths. I think a lot of people are very familiar with that.
Have you ever heard of strength mugs?
Yes, I have one.
Me too. That's great. I know that it's a friend of mine who founded that. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, I have two of them because it changed over time.
I'm going to introduce you to Scott, because he's a great guy.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So Clifton Strengths, I think, is great for understanding the talents that strengthen you. I also love a tool called Insights Discovery. It's very similar to DISC.
Okay.
It's a communication style tool.
Excellent.
So at the last organization I worked, that was something we adopted, and it made it very easy to go into conversations to say, you know what, Matt, I know that he leads with blue energy, he likes the facts, he likes the data, he likes to be prepared. So I'm going to send him questions ahead of time to take a look at so that he can truly feel like he can answer those. I'm not going to put something on the spot for him, versus this individual, Jen, who leads with green, and I know people are really important to her, and she's very warm. She's going to want to talk in the beginning. How was your weekend? I know your dog was really sick. How's everything going? And so it's a way to flex, not change who you are, celebrate what you bring to the table, and then maybe I just flex a little bit. And I know that we can partner together, and it's going to be magical. We might not always agree on everything, but that's okay, because we have different styles. Same with strengths, right? We have different strengths. And so I'll use a tool like that so that there's some self-awareness building. And I really emphasize the celebration. This is about understanding who you are. It is not about changing who you are, because sometimes I think people weaponize those tools. They put you in a box. And I also really emphasize this is something you took at a moment in time.
Yes.
It is giving you
Yes.
general picture. It's
Yep.
giving you a common language
Yep.
that you can talk about
Yep.
as an individual and as a team,
Yep.
but you are so much more.
Yep.
It is just one
Yep.
layer of onion.
That's so important. I think it's such an important caveat that I think for any kind of personality assessment or any of these tools, I think because there's lots of consternation about, oh, these, this tool changes, oh, we don't do it, and I think
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of missing the point. It is incorrect to use these as saying this defines you as a person,
Right.
and that's where you get in trouble.
Oh.
But as long as you take it as a generality, a moment in time,
Yeah.
it's good information.
Yes.
And even if you completely disagree with it, that's a data point too.
Exactly.
To see why is this or what's
Yeah.
going on, or maybe it's uncovering something that I'm uncomfortable with about myself, and I need to address that.
It is, and I always tell people if there's stuff in there that you don't agree with, share it with someone.
Yeah.
Someone that you trust that'll
Yeah.
give you the real deal.
Yeah.
And if they agree, okay. But if they don't, then that's something to just take a look at.
Yeah.
Right? It's more data to reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you understand, you build some self-awareness, how do I strengthen these areas that I have? How do I best leverage them? Maybe I need to flex in certain moments. And then who on the team have strengths that I don't? So
Yes.
for example, when we're using Clifton strengths, analytical is probably pretty low on my list. And woo is really high. I love
Okay.
people. I love talking to people. Can you tell?
Yeah.
Communication. So we have to do a presentation and we have to put in these graphs and all these things. Let's partner. Could you do the data for me, please, and put that together? And I will help with the storytelling piece. I'll do the presentation. So it's really leveraging the strengths that we have together and not saying, oh, woo's the lowest on my list, or analytical is the lowest
Yes.
on my list. I
Yeah.
really should focus on bringing that up. No, those
Yeah.
are your weaknesses.
Yes.
They weaken you.
Yeah.
Let's really just honor what you have. And I
Yeah.
have found in my personal journey, focusing more on my strengths, I'm so happy. I'm engaged. I feel joyful. Well, 100% of my day is not in those strengths.
Yeah.
80%, 75, 80% of what I get to do and what I want teams to be able to do is spend time in their strengths.
So as I hear you talking through this, I'm thinking about a couple of very clear scenarios of ways that managers can employ this information once they have them. First would be just that communication piece,
Yeah.
and knowing, because a big part of being a leader is adaptation
Yeah.
to all of the different people on your team. And a strengths-based approach can help teach you, who do I need to be in this situation? What's the best way to approach this other person?
Yeah.
So that's one way. Another way is in that kind of project planning of
Yeah.
really seeing like what's the best way to tackle this challenge when a new project comes in? Who's the best person on the team to give it to that's really going to light them up? Any other things come to mind of good ways to?
I would say as a leader, it is such great information when delegating. So I know that there's this project, I know that this opportunity coming up, and this person on the team, this is a strength for them and they love doing this kind of work.
Yep.
So I'm going to talk to them about potentially doing this.
Okay.
It could also be the way people collaborate, making sure that there is diversity in styles, diversity in strengths. I think one of the things that has come out of this in working with teams and even in leading my own teams is humanity. Just recognizing that we're all human
Yes.
and we all bring things to the
Yes.
table. And just that light bulb moment of, this person has been annoying me since they started, and now that I understand
Yes.
that that's the value that they bring and the strength they bring to the table, I see them in a different way.
Yes.
I no longer
Yes.
look at them as a barrier or object or the enemy. They could help me.
It's so true. I mean, so we teach 3 pillars of leadership at Better Very Studios, and the first one is always building trust. The leader needs to build trust, and seeing the humanity, connecting as individuals instead of employees, is so important. And I always tell the story because it's exactly what you said. I had 2 team members who had the same role, so they both theoretically on paper had the same function, but they were completely different personalities. Where one was very much like me, where it's just like, I'm going to get things done, 90% solution, like let's go. And they were one of the most productive people I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And the other person was like, no, 100% solution, like very detailed, very specific. And so there was a lot of friction between the two of them, understandably. And it was all about helping them appreciate the strengths that each other was bringing. Of this person can get the content out there, get things, make sure the team's serving. But when there's that, we're both in learning development, SCORM courses are notorious, online courses, there's always some problem somewhere where for 5% of the users it doesn't work.
Yep.
This other person could find that problem and fix it.
Yeah.
And so you need that match.
Right.
But until you point out those strengths, it's all friction because you're not the same as me, and I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And I think it also gives people some relief too. Leaders relief, individuals relief of, okay, I really can focus on the things that I like to do.
Yeah.
And that bring me joy. And it's okay to not be great at all of the things.
Yes, that's true.
And the shifting of work, I'm just thinking about the team that I used to lead. We shifted work. We created new partnerships based on the strengths that we learned about each other.
Interesting.
We prepared differently.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's these different communication styles,
Yes.
there was more, we always had an agenda, we had things ahead of time, but that didn't work for everybody. So it was there for those that wanted to look at it.
Yep.
And if you were the kind of communicator that you just like to think more on the spot, that's okay too. The way that we approached learning too, thinking about the different communication styles in the room. This isn't going to be 100% for everyone, but let's try to hit for the 80% mark and honor that there's going to be some different needs, some different preferences in the room, and that's great and beautiful and magical.
Yeah, and I think it all comes back to, because especially for more technically minded people and A-type personalities, it is always about like finding the flaws and picking up the weaknesses. But as you said, the studies really do show it's like, no, like it is more empowering. You do have more engagement. You do have more productivity, and it just makes everything clearer.
It does. And when you're a new leader, I mean, this is for any leader, but especially as a new leader, I would recommend relationships, that there should just be so much emphasis on relationships. Building relationships with your peers, with your leader, with your direct reports. Because when you have a leader that honors you as a person first, and you feel like they care about you, you want to work harder for them. And so it really is all about relationships. I think there has been conversations I've had with employees that make me cringe, where they'll say something like, I've had my leader for 2 years and they couldn't tell me my kids' names.
Yep.
And it's just a simple thing that even if you have a terrible memory, my husband, not a great memory, but when he meets people, he puts in his phone the person's name, their spouse, their kids' names, maybe even their dog's names. So he just has it and remembers. It's those small moments. That's what builds trust over time. It's these little moments. And so relationships is what I always, and strengths, work, communication preferences, things like that is a great way to start building that. And then not just infusing it into the work, but infusing it into growth. So we're really deliberate. Okay, you lead with red energy. You're focused on action, getting things done. Let's continue to strengthen that in a healthy way. And you've got these strengths of arranger and futuristic. So what does that look like? What is continuing to grow in that space look like? So we can be really deliberate with your growth path. And I'm supporting that growth path.
Yeah, and it can be, especially for people who aren't from the space, it can be challenging. You said red energy, and it's just like, like I can feel people who are low on the woo being like, okay, that's too much for me. But again, this is shown to work. This is, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to say red energy. Again, Clifton Strengths doesn't use any of that stuff. You can kind of call it different things.
Insights is red energy is an insights language.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah. Excellent. Awesome. Well, this has been really great. I'm really glad. I'm sure we could go a lot deeper on this because there's so much more. You're just getting started. What are some ways that people can reach out to you? Are you on LinkedIn primarily?
They
what
can
else?
connect with me on LinkedIn, Jennifer Recla, and I post a lot of content around leadership and strengths-based leadership. And then I have a website, jenrecla.com.
Excellent.
That people can connect with me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
I really appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. we deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.